I, T.H. Singh, welcome you all to the third session of Erudition 7, for which the theme is Disruptive Models, Transforming the Consulting Landscape.
Consulting as an industry has been immune to disruption for more than 100 years. Few factors which have contributed to it were opacity and agility. However, in the last few years, the industrial society has changed into information society, which has led to a rapid erosion of opacity and democratization of knowledge.
Modularization has also led to a shift in consulting's competitive dynamic from the primacy of integrated solution shops to modular providers. Disruptive models like Uberization, multi-sourcing, and rise of crowdsourced marketplace have set a new benchmark of agility and have helped in reducing client spending. It can be safely assumed that innovative business models will now be the new normal and will be the cause of consecutive disruption in the industry.
We are honored to have with us today an extremely diverse and esteemed panel. It is a pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished panel members. With this, we would like to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Arvind Mukhopadhyay. Sir has over 20 years of experience in management consulting and as a technology leader. Sir is an MBA from Ireland and Calcutta and a BTech in electrical engineering from Jadavpur University. He has extensive experience in helping large organizations to take transformative initiatives and adopt digital innovations for business growth and new capability. His notable contribution was in modernizing the food distribution supply chain in the country, integrating milk cooperatives and forming producer companies in India. Sir has spent over a decade in PwC as an associate director in the consulting division, holding various responsibilities like strategy and architecture practice in North region of the country. Sir is currently the India leader for Gardner Consulting and heads the Center of Excellence based in Gurugram, where he is responsible for client surveys across North America, Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Japan, and expanding its operations in India. We are honored to have you with us, sir.
Next, we welcome Mr. D.K. Singh. Sir has over 24 years of international management consulting and industry experience. He has supported his clients in developing compelling value propositions, designing transformation roadmaps, and building senior leadership capability. He holds a postgraduate diploma in management from Bangalore and a BTech in electronics and telecommunication engineering from ITBHU. He has founded Scale Decisions. He works on specific opportunities that needs acceleration to realize growth aspirations, drives the organizational alignment around the transformational priorities and talent sourcing agenda to address the capability requirements. In his earlier roles, Sir was a director with the Hay Group, where he provided engagement oversight in building effective organizations, top team alignment, and performance dashboards. Sir has also worked with technology and consulting companies like Oracle, Cisco, and AT Kearney. His major innovation was summarizing best practices of the top performing Indian companies that was featured as a cover story in Business Today. We are pleased to have you with us, sir.
We now welcome our next panelist, Mr. Manoj Madhusunagan. Sir has over 17 years of experience as an international business leader and operations executive, specializing in product innovation and transforming disruptive technologies into successful business models. He is co-founder and CEO of Zelligence, a soon-to-be launched artificial intelligence-driven platform to support customer due diligence. He also serves as the Innovation and Growth Advisor at BIS Research. In the past, Sir has led Inside B by EvalueServe from concept to reality as the Managing Director. Before taking on the Inside B initiative in 2014, he has served as the Global Head of Operations for EvalueServe's Corporate and Professional Service Business Unit, with responsibility for global operations across 5 continents. Sir was also the Vice President for EvalueServe's Business Research Practice. Earlier in his career, he has spent over 4 years as the management consultant with Accenture, focusing on strategy and process consulting. Sir holds a postgraduate diploma in management from XLRI Jamshedpur and a BTech in mechanical engineering from IIT Madras. We are pleased to have you with us, sir.
Next, we have with us Mr. Sandeep Khaitan. Sir has over 17 years of experience in US GAAP, IFRS, Indian Accounting Standard, Indian GAAP, and Companies Act related matters. He is a rank holder chartered accountant from the ICAI and an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. He is also a CPA from American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, registered with California Board of Accountancy. He is currently the engagement partner for EXL and has worked with several companies in the technology space, including MakeMyTrip, Paytm, Snapdeal, Jabong, and Flipkart. He has also played an active role in US listing of Genpact and MakeMyTrip, and in the recent Azure Power listing. He has led many Indian companies in the transition from Indian GAAP to Indian Accounting Standard conversion engagements across sectors and assisted several clients towards IPO preparations. We are pleased to have you with us, sir.
Next, we would like to welcome Mr. Vicky Behet. Sir has over 10 years of cross-functional experience in strategy consulting, performance improvement, operations, and project management. His personal interests include internet, e-commerce, and disruptive business models. He has supported his clients in developing compelling value propositions, designing transformation roadmaps, and in building senior leadership capability. Sir loves to write about business model innovation and the Indian startup ecosystem. Sir holds a postgraduate diploma in management from XLRI Jamshedpur and a bachelor's in economics from Ramjas College, University of Delhi. Mr. Behet is currently part of customer and operations practice at KPMG India. Most of his career has evolved around clients from the industrial manufacturing sector with a focus on automotive and automotive component sector. His key service area specializations include organization transformation, sales and channel strategy, market entry and growth, customer insights and strategy. We welcome you, sir.
We will now be starting with the panel discussion with 40 minutes for discussion, followed by 10 minutes of question and answer session. Over to you, panelists.
Thank you. So before we walked in, we spent around 15 minutes in your green room and we were trying to structure our conversation. This is the first time we are meeting face to face, five of us, and we were trying to figure out what's the best interest keeping you as audience. And then we thought probably what you could do is share some experiential learnings with you and also build on each other's experience. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite, we'll go left to right, we'll start with you, Vicky. And we'd like to hear from all of us. When we say disruptive models in management consulting, what it means to you individually? What's been your observation, what's been your insight?
So basically, we were gathering our notes and thoughts as Mr. Singh just pointed out. And my thought at the word, you just want So when the word disruption is spoken about, it's taken very widely. Like people use it very loosely also actually these days, that everything is a disruptive business model. So anything that gets technology angle to it, which did not used to have a technology angle, is being called disruption. But as I would define disruption, and then I'll come to disruption in consulting, is basically when there's a shift in value chain, I would call it disruption. So if we talk consulting specifically, we see that broadly it has been into strategy or operations for me, and I'll just give my viewpoint. And as far as strategy is concerned, if the clients of ours are in the new age businesses which are transforming because of technology and the business models themselves are getting disrupted, such as BFSI, telecom, and FMCG to a great extent, then we need to be a fast-paced consulting firm to really catch up to that. Otherwise, our solutions won't be relevant to them anymore. On the other side, if you look at operations consulting, automation has been called disruption for a great amount of time now, and hence we have picked up pace to have our consulting offerings also tuned with clients from an operations consulting standpoint when we talk about performance improvement, cost reduction, throughput improvement, etc. So just to remain relevant in the market, we believe that consulting firms also have to move a bit faster, and the thin line between technology consulting and management consulting from my viewpoint is kind of diminishing now, because we need more technology expertise to deliver even on management consulting assignments, which used to be a pure play, let's say a corporate strategy, a fixed fee engagement that we used to do, vision, mission statements, and 5-year, 10-year crystal ball gazing. That's no longer the cup of tea for clients, and that would be my viewpoint to start with.
Thanks. Yes, thank you. So, I think this is the 4th time I'm putting it back, so it's a good entertainment for me. Anyway. So, there is definitely a lot of disruption happening in consulting models. So I would put it in 3 buckets, just 3 points, and then others can elaborate further on. But one is definitely compared to maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when I was a consultant with Accenture, there was in 2000s, early 2000s, there was a significant component of most of the work that consulting firms used to do was proper strategy management consulting. And that mix is not changing a lot. From 60-70% of the mix, it's probably less than a third, or even less lower than that, right? So there is definitely, that's a signal that there is disruption happening. Second, you can clearly see there are lots of modularization of these services that's been happening over the past 10 years, which were so far called consulting, but consulting firms are not doing that anymore, right? I mean, those days, even to write a report, I worked with Erudition, as you probably have heard in the introduction, but in the days I was with Accenture in the early 2000s, we used to do all the Google search or Alta Vista search and all that ourselves, and that's changed a lot. It's now looks like I'm coming from the 19th century when I talk about that, right? So the models have changed. That modularization has gone a long way. That's the second part. Third, when I say disruption, I also see a lot of alternate professional services models emerging. For example, you have probably heard of a company called Business Talent Group, BTG. What they do is they are a platform where they bring a lot of very senior consultants who are willing to work on freelance basis, and then they would do a bit of project management themselves. But they are taking on very serious work. I've engaged with many of them in the past. So it's very interesting work and very senior people. And there are many such companies. There's a company called Eden McCullough based in London. So all these companies are alternate professional services models which are disrupting the traditional management consulting space. I think these are the kind of 3 areas which really signals that consulting space is getting disrupted here.
So when I look at past 25 years of my professional career, I really enjoyed working on pressing client engagements, pressing challenges, thoroughly enjoyed the new learning opportunities. Also struggled a lot to find quality time with my 2 young daughters. But when I look back, I really see 2 pictures coming up. At least they strike in a very interesting way. One relates to our clients, and second relates to ourselves. So when it comes to our clients, we really try to give our best, help them think through their lofty objectives, really working dispassionately, examining their current reality, trying to create some compelling options for them that make sense to them, and developing a roadmap which will help them realize their goals. So to summarize, really give our best. However, when it comes to ourselves as consulting firms, are we really practicing what we are preaching? That's a question that comes to our mind. That comes to my mind at least. It's a struggle for consulting firms. The question is, are we really eating our own dog food? Are we really trying to apply the same universal principles that we are trying to convey to our clients, create advocacy around those principles? Let's face it, disruption, it's being taught like the way we explained we do. It's a very loosely defined term, disruption. But let's step back and say how this industry looks like, management consulting, for past 70 years plus. We have to examine, like, it's not a new industry. We are mature. And you would know what are the characteristics of a mature industry. What happens here? More and more players start coming in. There's a pressure on profit margins. Focus of large firms is more on efficiency and less of innovations. These are the aspects that kind of create a perfect ground for a major disruption to happen. I'll stop at this and we'll discuss more as we progress. But the topic is relevant as some of you would be opting for this professional career as you move forward in your line. So some of these things would be interesting to you as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to begin by saying that the topic we have selected is very, very relevant. And I think we are sitting in a time when I think all industries are getting disrupted. In fact, we never we are never immune from disruptions, right? So, and probably I'll be focusing slightly more on the technology side of it. And if I talk about the kind of way the digital disruption is happening across all industries, I think the consulting industry is bound to be impacted by that. And now it is actually, I would be very keen to understand from the other panelists and explore further that what are the different models the consulting industry might look at. But the driving force would be the disruption which are happening around us, and which in a way impacting the way the customers of ours, they're looking to engage with the consultants, right? So probably there is a higher share of ex-consultants who are also holding the C-suites kind of positions in all corporates, and their understanding of consulting field is much more clearer, and they understand how to engage with the consultants and what to expect. Obviously, the ask from the consulting firm has gone significantly high, right? So what you are going to do and what is going to be your value proposition, how you are going to show your ROI, not just recommend something, but there is no clear way to show the end result. I think those are the trains which are significantly coming in place, and we are seeing it day by day, coming and impacting everyone's life who are in consulting industry. So I think I'll leave with this thought, and then as we progress through the discussion, it will be interesting to know the views from the other panelists. We'll look forward to get some comments from your side as well. So I'm hoping for an interesting discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Arindam. So I think my two bit on disruption is first of all, I think we are in consulting, we're yet to experience the disruption as to what we've been seeing in several other sectors, markets, reasons. For example, say telecom, right? Reliance Jio entered the space and completely shattered the sector, completely redefined the rules in the sector. Nobody would have imagined that somebody will come and spend billions of dollars and acquire 10 crore customers for free, right? So that's like disruption. Somebody just coming out from nowhere and changing the game. When you think about Netflix, for example, what Netflix is doing has completely changed the way you're going to experience, how do you watch television, for example. When you think about Amazon, for example, it's completely changing the way we're going to do our shopping experience, we're going to engage in the marketplace. It's changing. Big time Walmarts of the world are struggling, thinking about Amazon. When you think about IBM, for example, right? IBM has written a code in a way as a Dr. Watson, and you no longer possibly need to go and visit hospitals, and all of that may be available at the doorstep, just logging in and asking the right set of questions. When you think about education, for example, possibly next 10 years, none of us may be required to go to Harvard or Columbia or any other university we all wanted to go, because everything possibly will be available online, right? Will be available next door, and people no longer need to travel. So I think everything else out there is getting disrupted, to my mind, in a very, very big way. How it's going to happen to consulting is, when you look at the consulting space, is dominated by large firms, whether it is Ernst & Young, KPMG, Deloitte, Price Waterhouse, Boston Consulting, McKinsey. All of them in a way today dominates and have possibly more than 90% market share as to what we do and for whom we do. So how it's going to change is yet to see. I think the Black Swan event, to my mind, is yet to happen, but things are happening. Things are happening as to what we're doing to ourselves in terms of rethink, reboot ourselves to stay relevant, and how it will possibly change as to how do we increase the market size, how do we increase the access to consulting space to a large number of companies out there who still not been exposed to consulting, and how do we make it affordable. I think some of these things, to my mind, whosoever going to figure out this formula, I think is going to disrupt this market big time. I think that's what my take on this.
Thanks, Sandeep. Okay, so we have heard our first impressions of how these disruptions are shaping up, what's happening in consulting landscape, what it means for us. Now let's go a bit deeper and try to understand amongst ourselves what's triggering this phenomenon. What are those aspects that are causing this disruption to happen, whatever rate it's happening? So let's go in a particular order, or anyone like to go first? That's also fine. Same thing? Okay. Why don't you do it first?
So because we have a bunch of students here, I'd like to go to the fundamentals first. So what do consultants do? So consulting also is a very broad term. So there are a lot of types of consulting right here amongst us. So we solve a business problem, to be very straightforward. It can be any sort of business problem. My revenues are not increasing, my costs have gone up, my profitability has gone down. I want to enter a new market, should I do it or not? I want to exit a market, should I do it or not? I want to launch a new product, and so on and so forth. So it's a C-level agenda, as we call it. It's a CXO agenda, as we call it, CEO, CFO, etc. So now, if you go a bit deeper, if the problem in itself changes, then we have to keep up the pace. So 20 years, I was told by a gentleman that in 1980s, Bajaj scooter used to be an investment. But should I put my money in an FD, or should I put my money in booking a Bajaj scooter? Because 3 or 4 years from now, I'll get the Bajaj scooter, and that's when I can sell it for profit, and would I make more money than the fixed deposit on that or not? And now, you look at Bajaj, it got out of the scooter segment, it's only in the motorbike segment. That also it's focusing on performance bikes. Then it got into a 48% stake in KTM. Now, I'm just taking Bajaj as an example because the problems that Bajaj faced were zero in 1980s. There was a 3-year waiting for its product and full support of the government. The business in itself has changed completely. The market is so competitive. Honda is there. It's taken over the scooter market. Bajaj had to go scout for KTM. Now it has a tie-up with Triumph. It has to compete with Royal Enfield. Royal Enfield has a 95% market share in the 350cc plus segment. So, these kind of issues were not there at all that companies used to face. And I'm talking more on a traditional industry still. It's automotive. If you talk about even a new age industry, let's say we are talking about, Sandeep was talking about Amazon. So when these guys did not exist back in 2006, all the retail buying used to happen in stores, right? It's a simple fact. Now, 5,000 crores worth of goods were sold on Flipkart on this year's Big Billion Day. That was taken out of someone's pocket. We all haven't started earning so much that the market's pie has increased to that extent. So there is someone struggling as a retailer. And there are some stars retailers also like D-Mart. But the problem of competing with an Amazon in real time is the real problem in front of them. And how do I cope up with rentals, real estate, employees, electricity, all of those things that Amazon does not have to deal with. It has to deal with some logistics, a good technology backup, and a great organization to back it, and a lot of investments to put for the first 5 to 7 years. And it's kind of a geo story that we were speaking about. So that's the kind of problem that we need to solve as consultants. But the MBA remains the same that we do. Our curriculum doesn't change that much in most of the colleges, and I am myself from Delhi University, so nothing against any university as such, but yeah, that's the truth. So we have to actually invest in ourselves to keep up pace with this disruption. And I'll just take a couple of minutes on the business impact of this also for consulting as an industry. So consulting is generally sold on a man-hour, man-week, man-month, team-month basis. So that's like a stack rate that we have for clients. And if you see the variation in bids, at least I don't know, please disagree in case you. So I've seen the variation in bids becoming quite wide in the last few years. So in a project where one firm has bid for 2 crores, the other firm has bid for 50 lakhs, and there's a firm at 3.5 crores also, where everyone used to be in a plus minus 10% range some time back because they used to calculate the man hours required to solve a particular problem. Now the problem is complicated, and the way you deliver the solution is also pretty complicated based on, so you might have automated some solutions within your company as a consulting firm. So 50 lakh guy might actually end up doing a better job than a 1.5 crore guy. And so there are a lot of changes happening. KPMG in itself has separate service divisions working together. So we have a partner that looks at only fintech. We have a partner that looks at only AI, artificial intelligence, as a service line. And we have the traditional strategy partners, operations consulting partners. Now we have a new team called Customer Advisory Incorporated. So we are focusing only on customer-based consulting because customer experience and the right customer for the right product at the right place, the right time is becoming more important than ever. So we are changing. Our service lines are working far more closely with each other, which is a requirement of the future. And I believe that a big thing that would happen is that very specialized consulting firm, as also Manoj was talking about and giving a few examples, will also start succeeding solving very, very niche problems in the market. Like I know of a firm, Red Associates, which also got acquired, I think, by Cognizant. They hire only PhDs and philanthropists and PhDs in psychology and those kind of people who actually get into the customer's mind and define the market of one for your product. And it's a very small firm, Denmark and New York, 2 offices, and it used to compete with the big Bain, BCGs and McKinseys, and used to have a good portfolio of clients. And I think that's a change that's going to happen, and big firms will have their own issues to solve, and boutique firms will keep targeting the niche. And a lot of service lines going forward will come together and work together to deliver on solutions, because we can't work in silos anymore.
Thanks, Vicky. So if I look at why this is happening, one of the things that really comes to my mind is consulting firms earlier used to be a lot more opaque. You know, it's almost like a black box. You would hire a consulting firm because you don't have the knowledge or the skills to do what they would do. But increasingly what's happening is over the past 10-15 years, you have many of these management consultants moving into client organizations, as Arindam also mentioned. I mean, I read some statistic that McKinsey had 21,000 alumni in corporates in 2007, 10 years back. Now they have 32,000 people, alumni working in corporations, right? That's over 50% increase in the last 10 years alone. And what happens when all these people go there? They carry the knowledge, and these are street smart people. They are hard taskmasters. They would not just hire a consulting firm for the sake of it. They would look at ways to have more control, better ways of doing things, and they would break the whole process into modules and then hire the right solution or the product that fits well into this. And which is why, as Vicky said, all these Big 4 and big consulting firms, McKinsey for example, BCG, they're all getting into partnerships and trying to create their own productized models to serve that, right? But all these ex-consultants is really helping democratize knowledge in organizations. That's one point. The other point is the knowledge is also getting democratized because what you call knowledge is also changing very rapidly, right? So 90% of all the data in the world today was created in the last 3-4 years, right? So IBM estimates that every day 2.5 quintillion bytes of data get generated. Do you know what is quintillion? Anybody? 10 to the power 18, 1-8. Anybody said that? Yeah. Cool. So 10 to the power 18, just visualize it, right? That much data is getting 400 million YouTube videos are being watched every minute. Right, so it's unbelievable, right? So how this happens. Sorry, not every minute, every day probably, right? So, but it's just amazing the amount of information that is accessed and created is just humongous. And in the next 5 years, it's going to be even more. And that obviously means, and this data is most of this data is available in the public domain. So people who have good tools. So one of the things that consulting firms earlier had was they didn't have huge investment in terms of machinery or equipment. So they did not get disrupted like the industrial revolution. So they had people, they were very agile, they could create new skills very fast. But that is changing now because data is so easily available. Technology that can create meaning out of that to predictive analytics, big data analytics, call it whatever you want, create those insights. They are actually even more agile than human mind. And therefore, these platforms can create much more value than human analysis, which is again, they are losing the advantage of that agility that was there 10 or 15 years back. So I think things becoming more transparent and the advantage of agility getting lost is probably some of the key reasons why consulting space is getting disrupted in these years.
So, going back to the question, what are those aspects that are kind of accelerating this whole disruption process? When you look at management consulting as an industry, to my mind, few things at least tell me that these things are happening. So first thing is relevance of shelf life. Sandeep shared the example of Reliance Jio. Now, it's very interesting. Beginning of last year, a few of my friends were used to work in a large consulting firm for a telecom service provider, and they did something very interesting. A very practical churn reduction model. They put in almost like 4 months, a 5-member team, beginning of next year. Now, these insights were valuable. They couldn't last even 12 months because one disruptor walked in, chose a series of innovations, brought in pricing as free for voice, and the whole assumptions changed upside down. So the point I'm making here is, as these reports, which were like the big delivery aspect of any consulting firm, the shelf life is going to be really limited. The second part is about information asymmetry. Everyone knows, and we understand. So I recall my days, 20 years back, we used to really impress our potential clients by coming out with cover stories on Business Today, on Fortune, by demonstrating Western models or best practices, by dialing into proprietary databases, right? And we used to call it proprietary intellectual capital, and we'll charge a huge premium, and clients were willing to pay this premium for us. This is no longer true. There's hardly any asymmetry. There are disintermediaries who are providing this kind of information today at a fraction of price that clients used to pay us to management consulting firms earlier. So that's happening as a phenomenon. Third part is human effort. So I recall my days as an engagement manager. Generally, I used to make my projects profitable because I used to rely less on these Firangi experts and really staff it with young associates and analysts who would really deliver good on research, on developing insights, on analysis, on business modeling. So some of you would embrace this profession in the next few months. These associates are brilliant. They're trained very well on problem solving. They know what needs to be done in a short time frame. But they are also really become the backbone of the consulting pyramid. And they're leveraged very well. And that drives the profitability of the firm. What's happening in parallel? Information is being provided. A lot of advances are happening in artificial intelligence. Lots of advances are happening in automation, because of which human effort intensity is going to come down going forward. There's huge implications for consulting operating model going forward. Sandeep was discussing something on that side, how instead of making it transactional, you can actually reduce rework. And we were discussing, wow, this is happening, and that's going to change fundamentally the landscape. Fourth part is really about modularity. We talked about it, right? So about 12 years back, I was leading a large consulting engagement in one of the top India's PSU, a large organizational transformation engagement. So we had multiple work streams running in parallel. We had a team dedicated on the strategy side. We had a team looking at organization structure. We had a team looking at just the key processes of the organization, how best to improve them. And there was a team doing a deep dive on human resources function. What's the best way to restructure it? Now, the same client is not giving this one work to one firm. It's actually dividing it amongst a few players. People like us also get a share of this work. So modularity is live. It's hitting us hard. And it's all dependent on the way we act, specific the way you were explaining. As long as we can do that, we like to add value, but we have to demonstrate our grasp of issues there. So these are the 4 things that I think are really going to accelerate this whole process of disruption.
Okay, yeah, I think, very good point raised by starting from Vicky, Manoj and Mr. Singh. So, a couple of thoughts I would like to add. So I think if I just look for a moment slightly deeper and understand why this disruption, I think, my mind goes to things which is making it possible would be something which is technology related. I think the way technology has become democratized, as Manoj was saying about knowledge being democratized, I think technology also is getting democratized, right? I mean, anybody and everybody has access to technology, and that's leading some kind of extremely new things and disruptive models to evolve. And it's very difficult to predict, for a traditional industry, it's very difficult to predict that from where the disruption is going to come. For example, traditional travel industry is getting disrupted by an internet farm. To give an example of automobile and the new things like automated cars and or those kind of innovation is not being done by another automobile firm but by Google. And if I just look at the fundamental of it, how technology is driving innovations and disrupting business models, I think that's significant, and I think the consulting has to adapt to that change. Though I don't believe that probably consulting industry is going to get disrupted by new technology, but I think it's need of the hour that the consultant gets into it. I think that also leads me to think that probably the fields of different fields into the consulting are going to be sort of getting blurred day by day. For example, if I am talking about just operational consulting versus supply chain or financial sector consulting, I think nothing is going to be working without the influence of the technology innovation which is happening in that field. And how the consulting firms, they are kind of cross leveraging this silo of skills into a combination of capabilities and potential ways to look through the maze and kind of helping the clients to see what is in store for them, because we are also sitting in a very difficult time in a way that nobody is very clear. I mean, we are hearing a lot of things, disruption, digital, but really what is for me, if I'm just thinking me to be a client and corporate in any industry, what exactly I should do, and the problem statement typically we go to the consultants right now is not just traditional business problems, but also to make my survival strategy, right? I mean, the way the disruptions start happening, what is my survival strategy? How do I grow? How do I retain my market share? And how do I make myself competitive and innovative and all of that? And if you think of large organizations, I mean, for running business for several years, and suddenly they have to change and they have to work like a startup firm. And I think that is very relevant to think that way. That probably organizations they have to function like a startup. They have to think innovatively. They have to think of innovative model and disrupt themselves. And that is another trend that the digital giants we are calling. The digital giants like the Googles, Amazons, and so on, they are also disrupting themselves, right? I mean, think of Amazon, what they used to do a couple of years back, and what they're up to. They're doing something which is probably disrupting their own model. So I think it's a very sort of interesting time, and everybody is in a state where they're trying to figure out that what best they can do, and on one hand, while the consulting firms, they're solving the traditional business problem, but I think we are more and more seeing the problem statements are changing. It is also to do with how to keep pace with the innovations, how organizations they are becoming more innovative, they're working like startup, they have to have startup mindset along with their traditional mode of working. They also have to innovate and fail fast and show those startup mindset. To innovate and be competitive and be relevant in the market. So, yeah, those are a few thoughts I have.
Thanks, Arindam. I would like to just give it a very, very simple perspective. So many of us who think that we are consulting, the markets looks at consultant as somebody, let's say, this guy is coming, what is this guy going to do? Cut, copy, paste. Okay. So I think now that time is changing. Okay. So if you wanting to be a consultant, right, in real time, I think what you heard from all of us is that you got to be really ahead of the game. If you're going to do what you've been told to do, I think very soon you're going to be irrelevant, because when you look at across market sectors, I think things are changing, and your ability to be agile, your ability to think, around the box, outside the box, and inside the box is what going to keep you going, and it's no longer going to be a cut, copy, paste. So that way, I think consulting is going to be very, very demanding with the access of information all around us, with the access of technology all around us. I mean, and a very, very different way of looking at business models. For example, WhatsApp keeps on growing, not stopping, but is still to make a single penny for their shareholders, right? So who's going to advise this business model to a company? So how are you going to be profitable? Look, I don't want to be profitable for next 10 years possibly, because that's what my business model is. So this is like completely 360-degree turnaround to say what's the business model of this company is when they don't want to make money. So or what's the business model of Apple is when they just keep want to make money and not to stop, right? So where will it stop? They make money, which is possibly equal to, profits made by all Indian companies, BSE top 100 companies listed in Indian Stock Exchange. A single company, Apple, makes that amount of profit. Right, their market cap is very soon going to be, looks like, equal to the GDP of India, right? So I think the whole landscape is very, very challenging. The whole landscape is always changing. So if you want to try your hand at consulting, I guess you got to give up a lot of things, and you got to be out there challenging yourself. That are you up to it? Because one of the success of a big successful consultant, reason for a successful consultant, is that your ability to do multitasking, right? And when you say that, can I do multitasking? It's not only about doing same thing faster, but doing multiple things at or about the same time. So you not only need to know what you're doing, You need to know many things what you are not supposed to be knowing generally speaking. So that's where the life of consultant is changing, and that's where how consulting is changing. So it's a very, very tough world and changing world out there. So that's what you got to keep in mind. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so let's move to next section, which is really about our own judgment, and I'd like to share this with you, how the future looks like for management consulting industry. What are those aspects, seen from the prism of different firms? Yeah. So again, we can follow the same format. So let's examine a different perspective.
So it's crystal ball gazing, I would say. It's very difficult to say. We have spoken about this since the last 7 years. Things haven't changed that much, actually. As we also discussed, and Sandeep mentioned that disruption in consulting as of now, not really. Like there is enough demand. I cannot comment on other geographies. Maybe Manoj would be better person to tell us what's happening in the UK, for example, because things are changing faster than India for sure. But again, I'll move back to the same point that traditional industries, being your clients like industrial manufacturing, where I have had most of my clients, problems still remain of similar nature, and so do the consulting services. So it's been quite similar, and things haven't moved too much. But yes, we are getting more and more interest from clients in newer services that we have started offering lately. Let's say a lot of B2B clients have come to us lately and asked us for customer advisory. So B2B used to be a pure make and push business. For example, India always used to have, let's say, if you talk about fertilizers, they never used to think about their customer. Their customer is the distributor. There's no customer view at all. They just manufacture, ship it out, it will get sold. And now in the last 4 years, I have done 3 assignments where fertilizer companies have reached out to us saying that I want to know what my customer wants to buy. Because there is overcapacity, customer's son went to a school and then went to a college, and now he knows more about what urea is all about and what NPK is all about and what my soil type is and what are these guys selling me. So his father used to just buy what the panchayat used to decide. So things are changing. So a lot of traditional businesses are requiring relatively newer services, and I'm assuming that a lot of modern businesses will require even more new consulting services. So I haven't worked particularly with an e-commerce player as a consulting client, but yes, there is a team in KPMG that works only with e-commerce clients. So that team does really phenomenal job. So in some of our projects, our solutions were so out of the box that I was also amazed to know, and I'll just share one case that a client was facing growth issue. And a traditional consulting approach would have been, okay, 10,000 crore market, you are 15%, let's see what pockets are you in, your priority customer segments, your price positioning, let's look at your strategy, is everything fine, let's see where you can grow, okay, let's make a plan to take you to 20%, so something of that sort. But now, the solution that their team gave to a relatively new business model was incubate a fund. So you create a fund of your own and get talent from top schools, invest in their ideas, and invest in ideas that are adjacent to your business. And let's try this out, because those minds are going to work very differently, and let's have the traditional business growth ideas separate, and let's do work separately. And those disruptive ideas from that fund have actually garnered them more profits lately than the traditional business. So traditional consulting would have never thought of something like this. Let's make a fund of your money. So clients are approaching us saying that I'm sitting on a kitty of 100 crores, but I don't want to invest in my own business. It just gives me 8%, 6%. Tell me where to go. And there are new age businesses, there are new questions that are being asked, and there are new solutions that are going to be provided. And I think things are moving a bit slowly from a pure management consulting standpoint. But yeah, there are pockets within management consulting industry that are growing faster and changing faster. And I think the bigger firms
definitely have those, and then as I said earlier, there are very niche boutique consulting firms that are focusing only on those new age solutions. And that's how I see the market in the next 4 to 5 years also.
So I would say 2 points. One, how are consulting firms going to change in terms of how they would fight for survival and who will become successful, right? Some hypotheses and thoughts around it. Second part is the traditional boundaries between different segments of consulting is kind of becoming thinner and thinner. So these are the 2 things I would elaborate a bit. So first, with all these discussion about disruption and everything, if anyone is looking for a career in consulting, I would say very confidently go for it, right? I mean, really work for it to get into one of the prestigious consulting firms. It will continue to be a very rewarding career. Because the problems that you're going to solve, these consulting firms which will survive will look at them in a very innovative way, and you would have a fantastic opportunity to create value. I mean, if you look at the McKinseys and BCGs of the world, they have already, or KPMG, right? Already there is a lot of ecosystem they are creating with all these startups and partnerships and all. The way in which consultants used to work might have changed, but consulting firms will still continue to be a very exciting place to work. That I have no doubt about. But what will happen is, not every consulting firm of today will be there maybe 20 years from now. The leading names. Some will be starved, some will be cash strapped, some will not have the agility, and they would be like walking like a dinosaur, and they might die down, or they might get acquired. So there is going to be some bit of consolidation that would happen over the next 15-20 years, or 10-15 years. That is definitely going to happen. So that's one point. Second, the boundaries between consulting firms or the consulting practices is changing significantly. Lots of the big 4 are actually now getting into more and more consulting. Deloitte has, I think, over a third of, I think probably about close to 40-50% of the work coming from consulting now, which is not the case maybe earlier. Have you heard of a company called IDEO? It's a company which has combined industrial design consulting and innovation consulting together. So you go to YouTube and watch a video of how IDEO works. It's a very inspiring video to give you some ideas on innovation. Right? That itself will give you an idea of how consulting firms are removing the traditional boundaries. I'll just stop here with a couple of points I wanted to highlight.
So we are running short of time. So what we'll do very quickly, we'll go through the next part. So that we can start the Q&A quickly. So my 2 bits on how the future looks like for consulting industry. When I crystal ball and see the crystal ball from my lens, I see 2 hazy pictures. One is management consulting is going to stay, but probably the current form will change, hopefully for better. And the second part is really, it's all about solving pressing problems, and those firms that really step up and give their best in terms of solving those pressing problems that clients can't solve on their own will survive and will do well, will thrive. Others will have to introspect and really figure out what's the best way to really think about it. And for them, past success is no guarantee for future success. We'll have to really be quick so that we can start the Q&A.
Yeah, I think just if I have to mention one point in addition to what you already have mentioned is that probably, and you touched upon that intellectual capital. I think the consulting firms have to more focus on developing their own intellectual capital. It cannot be just traditional going there and interacting with the client and problem solve, but also showing the value add and the value delivery and value-based pricing as opposed to labor-based pricing, what Ritu was mentioning. I think these are the few trends which will evolve and will be more streamlined and mainstream rather than just one of the things which are there currently.
Yeah, so I think my bit on this is consulting is here to stay, okay? And if you, I think there are three things which continue to be relevant and will be relevant in times to come is consultants, entrepreneurs, and lawyers. So I think these are the 3 set of professionals who will continue to thrive, and they are the one who's going to run organizations, and they are the one who's going to decide what needs to be done. And rest all is, I would say, is execution. So I think any strategy, any thinking, any out-of-the-box thing will come from either an entrepreneur or from a consultant, or possibly from a lawyer too. Yeah.
Let's go to Q&A. If you have any, we have about 15 minutes for Q&A. Okay. Is there someone who's going to direct the question part?
Students are requested to use only one mic at a time, and please raise your hand before asking the question.
And one more request, if you have a specific panel member, take the name of that person. Otherwise, if you don't have the name, ask your question and we'll distribute among ourselves. Is that okay? Okay. So we'll start with left and we'll move in this direction. Question from this side. Yep. Don't have a mic?
It's that all these startup companies like e-commerce companies like Amazon, then Flipkart, what they are doing is that they are trying to grab the market until and unless they are becoming a dominant player. For that they are burning caches. But for WhatsApp, it's already a dominant player. It's a single player who is having a huge market share. Then why they are not going for the cash flow? Why they are not earning cash? Then how long these investors can back these companies which are not earning cash? This is my question.
Yeah. So I think one of the significant challenges, I think in the new age industry compared to a traditional industry, is that the entry barriers, which used to be very high. For example, if you were to set up a steel plant, right, you need thousands of crores. If you were to set up a cement plant, you need thousands of crores. If you need to set up a refinery, you need 1,000 of crores. But if you need to start a chat service, is what WhatsApp is doing, you don't need thousands of crores. You need possibly some set of engineers who understand coding, who have some capital, and then some VC to back them up, and then can launch the service. Right? So the business model itself keeps on evolving. So for you to say that I've got now a dominant business model which cannot change, I think that those days are gone, because it's easy to replace you, but not easy for somebody like Google, for example. Right? Google never charges you for what you search on the Google, but they make money through advertisement. Facebook, we all been using Facebook. They started making money because of advertisement, because the network has now become so big. In a way, it has become indispensable. And same possibly is going to be the case with WhatsApp, but they may not make money by way of providing the chat services, but they may make money by doing many things which are yet to come, which possibly could be including, for example, payments, possibly including, providing, how do you do B2B? Currently it's all B2C, but how do you do business to business transaction and possibly figure out a way of making money? So the models will continue to evolve in a way to make money. Yeah.
Let's take a question from the center. Can you speak loud?
Hello sir, my name is Anand. My question is, as being in consultancy field, you guys must be signing a service level agreements with your new clientele. And that particular service level agreement has a predefined satisfaction level, say about 95-96% of it. And suppose that particular satisfaction level is not matched at the end of the project. How do you deal with it? Because this particular sort of disruption you guys must be facing in the past also and in the future also, whether you have any sort of advancement that you get through.
Okay, so let me repeat and paraphrase your question. You are saying, what do consulting firms do when clients say we are not delivered with up to our expectations? How do consulting firms respond to it? Yeah, what do they do? Anyone?
So I think if I talk about traditional model again, I mean the consulting firms are responsible for giving us strategy. If I think of that, as I think Manoj mentioned, that it's very difficult often to see what is the clear output of that, right? So I do the strategy and then I leave it up to the organization to implement and execute and at the end of the day, if they are not getting the result which was intended, probably I can just push off the responsibility from my shoulder and say that no, I mean it was lack of your execution capability which made this strategy fail, right? So yes, and that's a very interesting point what you raised. But I think that is again one thing which is changing, and organizations they are holding consultants more and more accountable, and also has to do with the fact that there are increased amount of ex-consultants who are at the C-level positions in these organizations, right? So they know how to deal with the consulting firms, and they know how to hold them responsible. And also it is a pressure backward for the consulting firm to make their service probably a little bit of, little integrated. They cannot just do the strategy and then come out. Also be there for longer term, be associated with the client during the execution phase and make sure that the result is delivered. So I think these are the change which has already started taking place. It's not something which is a disruptive model, but I think it's a very valid question.
Let's go to this side. Yep.
So I want to ask a question that is regarding marketing consulting. So the entry of private label brands like Futures, Bazaar, and etc. Has disrupted the FMCG segment, basically, and also the apparels. So the retailers are retaining more power compared to the manufacturers. So that's why the retailers, they are capitalizing on the forefront that they face with customers. So now how consultant is, how consultant will be able to tell the manufacturer that, okay, manufacturer still holds the value and he still can consolidate upon his manufactured items.
Okay, good question. Did everyone understand it? I'll just repeat the question. So he's asking about private label brands that are available in stores. So if you go to a More or a Big Bazaar or all these places, they have their own brands, and Reliance Fresh, for example, has its own masalas and tissue papers and all of those things. So how would a manufacturer deal with this change, and what would a consultant recommend or suggest or in this kind of situation? So two things. One is, what's your core competency? So all these are pretty replaceable things in any way. So if Reliance Fresh offers its own private label masalas, then MDH would already have a competition with 9 other brands, and this is a 10th, number one. So if there is, so one is the Competition Commission of India kind of story, that you are doing something which is unethical. So that goes there. So I'm talking pure play with an assumption that everything is being done in an ethical manner. So this has already been factored in the business models of a lot of these manufacturers already. So just to give you an example, if you go to, let's talk about tissue papers. So you must have seen a brand called Origami, and it has 2 manufacturing plants. And if you go to More and you pick up a tissue paper, it's actually manufactured in an Origami plant, and you have to mention the plant name on the box. So, and both are selling right next to each other. So they are already factored in white labeling, because that's a channel that they have to use, they can't let go of it, and they know that there would be a low margin side of high volume game, and there would be another channel where they'll make more money using their own brand. So most of the people have already started factoring in as a part of their business models. So there's no real consulting intervention, I would believe, that's required as far as this phenomenon is concerned.
We got a cue from the facilitators. We have the time left to just take one last question. So let me go right back at the road, the lady, right in center.
So my question is open to the entire panel. So we know that technology is increasing at an ever fast rate, while human adaptability to the same technology rises only at a slow linear rate. So in this context, what are the innovative change management solutions that you propose to your clients when their workforce might have a phobia of change?
So let me repeat your question. You're saying the rate of change in the context is alarmingly high. organizations adapt, and that takes time. In the context of this rate of change, how do workforce solutions look like? Is that the question?
Yeah.
So that's a significant requirement for most of our clients. How the skill profile is changing, how the leadership capability is changing, how industry content, the way people used to say hands-on knowledge, that's changing. Right? Like 3 years back, we used to talk about 3G and expertise in 3G. Nowadays, it's all gone. People are talking about 4G. 5G is already knocking on the door. So there are few aspects which are controllable, few aspects which are not controllable. So when you look at workforce and when you look at building leadership pipeline and say XO pool, you can just control few aspects which you know are going to happen, likely to happen. There are other parts for which you can't control it. So then what needs to be done is you have to think about behavioral capabilities, like strategic thinking, like decision making under uncertainty, like role modeling. And these are the skills that people are encouraged to build and leverage them going forward, as opposed to a specific content which may be there, may not be there going forward. So that's one of the ways to look at it. It's very difficult to predict for a telecom services company or for IT service company to say what's the next level of evolution going to be 4 years down the line. But what you can do very well is to look at, okay, this is my delivery capability. These are some of the foundational skills that are relevant to us. And this is how we look at leadership requirements going forward, and we can plan for that. So one part can be planned, second part cannot be planned. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed this interaction. All the best in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Our esteemed speakers with a token of our appreciation.
Mr. Arindam Mukhopadhyay. Mr. Manoj Madhusudana. Mrs. Sandeep Ketan. And Mr. Vicky Ram.
A short address by our team convention convener, Avtaab Singh Ahluwalia.
Good evening, everyone. There are a number of people I would like to thank before we close the session and the day. First and foremost, I would like to thank the esteemed speakers across all the panels for taking time out from their busy schedules and gracing our event. We hope to have more such insightful sessions with you all in the future. Then I would like to thank Professor Kavita Sharma, Head and Dean Department of Commerce, Delhi School of Economics, Dr. Niti Ghasil, IB Course Coordinator, Dr. Urvashi Sharma, HRD Course Coordinator, and other faculties who have religiously helped us in making this event a grand success. I would also like to thank alumni team for having two prestigious alums with us, corporate relations and discipline team for tirelessly working with us throughout the whole day, as well as all the anchors for being the face of Erudition 2017. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the students without which this event would not have been possible. Team Convention is truly grateful to you all. I would now request all the faculty members as well as all the members of Team Convention who have worked day and night since the last 3 months for this event to please come up on stage for a group photograph with the panelists. Thank you.